If you have ever driven across Texas and felt like the towns come and go faster than your signal, you are not imagining it. Texas has had thousands of named places. Some were real towns, some were just a post office and a rail switch. Some were a company's idea of a model community that only existed as long as payroll did. And then, a lot of them slipped away. Not in a movie way, not in a haunted house way. More like this: the map kept the name for a while, the road signs stayed up, and then one day the town was just not a town anymore. This video is about 12 Texas towns that quietly disappeared, not always fully erased, but reduced so hard that what remains feels like a leftover footprint. One quick note before we start. Some of these sites are on private land, some are fragile, and some are dangerous to walk through. If a place is fenced, posted, or clearly private, treat it as off-limits. Now, let's start at number 12. And stay with me until number 6, because number 6 is the kind of story that makes you stop and ask, how did that happen in real life? Number 12. Indianola, Calhoun County. Indianola sat on Matagorda Bay on the Gulf Coast, in a spot that made it more important than most Texans realize. In the mid-1800s, this was not some tiny fishing hamlet. It was a county seat, a major port, and for a while it ranked as the second port in Texas. People and goods came through here on the way into the interior. There were roads that linked the coast to San Antonio and beyond, and Indianola became a key door into the state. It was even one of the places where the U.S. Army's camel experiment landed its animals in the 1850s, a detail that sounds like a joke until you read it in the records. Then came the storms. The first storm that really broke the town hit in September 1875. The timing was brutal. The town was crowded with visitors for a trial tied to the Sutton-Taylor feud. When the hurricane pushed in, bay water ran deep into the streets. After it passed, reports said only a small handful of buildings were left undamaged, and the estimated deaths were somewhere in the range of 150 to 300. Indianola tried to rebuild, but it was smaller, and it was wounded. Then, in August 1886, another hurricane hit, and this one came with fire. The second storm is often described as worse than the first, but with less town left to destroy. That is the part that makes Indianola different. Some towns get their one disaster, then they rebuild. Indianola got the warning shot, then the knockout punch. Today, the town as a major place is gone. You can still stand near where it once was and look out at the bay, and the emptiness feels bigger when you realize it used to be full of ships, warehouses, and people who expected the future to keep coming. Indianola is our first example of the biggest Texas theme in this video. When the water decides your town's fate, you do not get to negotiate. Number 11. St. Mary's of Aransas, Refugio County. Now we move up the coast and across a bay to a place that vanished in a different way. St. Mary's of Aransas sat on Capano Bay, and it flourished in the second half of the 1800s. It was planned as a port town and became a key shipping point for lumber and other goods moving inland. The town's whole purpose was movement. Wagons and cart trains ran between the port and towns like Refugio, Goliad, Beeville, San Antonio, and farther. Then, the Civil War hit. Many of the town's men left to fight, and at one point, federal warships captured the place without a fight and burned warehouses and a wharf. The town survived that, but it tells you how exposed a coastal port can be. After the war, steamship service mattered. St. Mary's got connected with the Morgan Lines, one of the early steamship lines serving the Texas coast. But Capano Bay had a problem that does not care about ambition: reefs. The bay hid submerged reefs. Wrecks started piling up, and the shipping situation got worse. Storm damage in 1875 is described as a turning point for the steamship line's regular service, and the town never fully recovered its momentum. Add in the rise of nearby Rockport and the way rail routes favored other places, and the town's future started to narrow. Then storms in the late 1880s did what storms often do on this coast. In 1886, the wharves and the schoolhouse were destroyed by a storm. The next year brought another storm that was even more destructive. After that, St. Mary's did not die in one loud moment. It dwindled. It faded out, as old histories put it, until the post office and general store closed in 1907. Here is a human detail that hits. Clara Driscoll, later known for helping save the Alamo site, was born here in 1861. So when you think about St. Mary's, do not picture a spooky ruin. Picture a working port town that lost the basic things a port needs: safe shipping, steady service, and a reason for the railroad to choose it. Number 10. Old Bluffton, Burnett County. If Indianola and St. Mary's show the violent side of water, Old Bluffton shows the planned side. This story sits in the hill country on the Colorado River system, where the chain of reservoirs became a huge part of Texas life. Bluffton existed as a small community in that river world. Then, Buchanan Dam was completed in 1937, and the lake behind it, Lake Buchanan, inundated the old town site. That is the official word. Inundated. But in human terms, it means a place where people lived got put underwater on purpose, because the new lake and dam were seen as the bigger need. The community moved, the roads shifted. Even State Highway 29 had to be relocated between Burnett and Llano because the lake changed the land. And then something strange started happening decades later. When drought hits hard and lake levels fall far enough, the past shows up again. In late 2011, after a long drought, NASA's satellite imagery and reporting pointed out how shorelines pulled back and former settlements appeared at the lake's edges. Old traces show up, and the feeling is unsettling because the lake is supposed to hide it forever. Reports from drought years also describe investigations by the Texas Historical Commission's Archaeology Division in the area of the old town site. Because when a town rises out of a lake bed, even briefly, it becomes a fragile historical site fast. Old Bluffton is not a place you can promise to go see. Some years you will see nothing. Some years the water pulls back and the lake looks like it is giving up a secret. And the reason it matters is simple. This is a Texas town that did not fail. It was traded. Number 9. Lobo, Culberson County. Now we head far west, where the land is big, the towns are far apart, and water is not a background detail. Water is the whole plot. Lobo sits in Culberson County, out in West Texas, and it has one of those histories that is basically a graph of water access. In the early 1950s, cotton became important in the area, and a cotton gin was set up in Lobo. Irrigation made that possible. For a while, the town had a second chance. But by the mid-1960s, when the estimated population had climbed to around 90, the water table started dropping dramatically. The cost of running the pumps shot up, and the cotton gin shut down. This is not just a vague drought story. Reporting later described a state board estimate that groundwater under the flats had dropped something like 70 to 90 feet after heavy pumping. If you have never lived near a farm area, that number might not land. But if you have, you know what it means. The same pump and the same engine that worked last year suddenly feels like it is trying to pull water out of another world. Lobo's decline kept going. Businesses struggled. The place became known as a modern ghost town. And then the story takes a turn that feels like Texas, but also feels like the internet age. A group of friends from Germany bought the town in 2001, used it for arts events, and even an experimental film festival. Then, in recent years, reports say the owners put it up for sale because keeping the property going became too much. Lobo matters because it shows a quiet killer that does not look like a hurricane on the radar. It is the slow math of pumping water out faster than the land can refill it. Number 8. Cincinnati, Walker County. Now let's go back in time to the river era. Cincinnati sat on the Trinity River in northern Walker County. In the 1800s, that river was a major route, but it was also unreliable. Sandbars and shifting water levels could strand boats for months. People tried to fix it and failed again and again. Still, towns formed around the movement, and Cincinnati became a river port and ferry crossing. It was a collection point for cotton, goods, and travel. In the early 1850s, Cincinnati was at its peak. The town had a list of basic businesses that tells you it was real: stores, a warehouse, a gin, doctors, tradespeople. Population estimates from that time vary a lot, roughly 200 to 600. Then, in 1853, yellow fever arrived. According to the historical record, a traveler from Galveston brought it to town. The number of deaths is not cleanly documented, but one account says perhaps as many as 250 people died. Even if you treat that number carefully, the bigger impact is what happened next. People fled. When a disease hits a small river town in the 1800s, fear moves faster than medicine. And when people leave, a town can lose momentum, and it never gets back. Then, the last big blow came from the railroad. In 1872, the railroad line connecting Houston and Dallas crossed the Trinity River about 15 miles downstream. At Riverside, that one choice moved the future away from Cincinnati. 10 years later, the population was down to a few dozen. The post office closed later. Cincinnati is a reminder that disappeared does not always mean burned down. Sometimes it means the river was not enough anymore, and the tracks chose somewhere else. Number 7. Sherwood. Erie County Sherwood is the type of Texas town that can fool you because it still exists. But the Sherwood that mattered, the Sherwood that ran Erie County, that Sherwood is basically gone. Sherwood was laid out in the late 1800s and became the county seat when Erie County organized in 1889. For a while, it was the county's main population center. In 1900, it had a few hundred residents. In 1901, a new courthouse was completed. That tells you the town believed in itself. Counties do not build serious courthouses if they think the future is temporary. Then, the railroad did the thing railroads do. The Kansas City, Mexico, and Orient Railway bypassed the community during its 1910 to 1911 construction, and a new railroad town, Mertzen, rose to pull people and business away. That shift did not happen in one weekend. It happened as families followed work, stores followed customers, and county politics followed power. In 1936, an election designated Mertzen the county seat. So Sherwood did not vanish off the map. It just lost its role. What remains is the strongest visual on this entire story. An old county seat courthouse, still standing in a place that no longer runs the county. Sherwood matters because it proves something simple. Sometimes you can build the building and still lose the town. Number 6, New Birmingham, Cherokee County. This is the one I told you to wait for. Because New Birmingham is not just a ghost town story. It is a story about a town that was built to look permanent, then got stripped down until the last building was hauled away. New Birmingham sat near modern U.S. Highway 69 and Farm Road 343, just outside Rusk in Cherokee County. It was founded in the late 1880s by a man named Anderson B. Blevins, who saw iron ore in the area and imagined an industrial center that could rival Birmingham, Alabama. He was not dreaming small. By 1890, New Birmingham had an estimated 2,000 residents. It had factories and mills, an ice factory, a bank, and one of the early electric generating plants in Texas. And then there was the Southern Hotel, a 3-story brick hotel with hot and cold running water and electric lights, the kind of building meant to tell outsiders, this is a real city now. The guest list was wild. President Grover Cleveland, Governor Jim Hogg, railroad magnate Jay Gould. If you had visited at that moment, you would have thought the place was locked in. But the town had a problem from the start. Capital. It needed money constantly. The backers tried to bring in more investors. At one point, they tried to make a deal with the Baring brothers in England. Then, a Texas law got in the way, the Alien Land Law, which prohibited foreigners from owning land in Texas. That undermined the plan, and attempts to get an exemption failed. Then came a string of blows that feel like the universe stacking cards. One major backer, William Harrison Hammond, was killed in 1890. A story grew around his widow, who reportedly ran through the streets calling on God to leave nothing standing in the town. The history sources treat this as something later people looked back on as an omen, not proof of anything. The real collapse was money and disaster. In 1893, the panic hit. That was the year of the point of no return. An explosion and fire destroyed the main furnace. Almost 300 residents lost work, and the big hotel and most manufacturing closed. By July 4, 1893, a local paper was already calling the Iron Queen dead. The town limped for a while with attempts to restart operations in later years, but it never came back. And then came the part that makes people blink. Most of the remaining structures were razed and salvaged. The material was used in rusk. The hotel burned later. The last building, the schoolhouse, was torn down in 1932 to make way for a highway. New Birmingham is not just a place that died, it is a place that got harvested, a town that got turned into building supplies for other places. And that is why it belongs at number 6. Number 5. Helena, Karnes County. Helena is one of those towns where the line between real history and local legend is part of the town's identity. It was once the county seat of Karnes County and had real civic life, including schools and newspapers. In the 1880s, its population hit roughly 250 to 300. Then, you hit the legend layer. There is a famous story about the Helena duel, a knife duel, where opponents are tied together by the left hand. The sources describe it as legend, not a daily event, but it tells you how people wanted to talk about the place. Helena's real turning point was the railroad. In 1886, Helena was bypassed by the railroad. The story includes another legend about a wealthy rancher whose son was killed in Helena, and the rancher vowed to dry up the town. The history notes this as legend, but it also includes a practical detail. Helena citizens refused to raise money for a railroad through town, and an alternate route became available. Either way, the result is what matters. The tracks went elsewhere, and Helena began to wither. Then, in 1894, after a heated election, Karnes City became the county seat. The old courthouse at Helena was turned into a school, and businesses moved. Helena did not get erased the way Indianola did. It shrank, then lingered. Today, Helena still has restored historic structures as museum pieces, and it even does a one-day post office event tied to a December celebration. So why is it on this list? Because it shows a truth that repeats across Texas. You can lose the railroad once, and the whole town becomes a different creature. Number 4. Best, Reagan County. The name Best sounds like a punchline, and in a way, the history is. Best started in the 1920s as a railroad-related stop and grew fast as a supply center after oil discovery in the area. By 1925, the population was estimated around 3,500. That is a real boom. The problem is what booms bring with them. According to the historical record, boosters wanted a model town, but the reality included violence, brawls, and a reputation bad enough that a saying took hold: best name, worst reputation. It was bad enough that a 1946 novel, The Big Fist, used Best's reputation as a foundation for its story. Then, the boom moved on, and the town declined quickly after 1925. Over the decades, the population dropped again and again. By modern counts in the historical record, it becomes a place with almost no one left. Best matters because it shows how fragile boomtown math is. A town can jump to thousands of people, then spend the next 100 years sliding down into silence. Number 3. Shafter, Presidio County. If you want a single town on this list that looks like a movie set, even when no one is filming, it is Shafter. Shafter is tied to the Shafter Mining District in Presidio County, an area with multiple prospects mined for silver and related ores. Most of the production came from one major mine, the Presidio, and the recorded output is massive. Over 32.6 million ounces of silver, plus some gold, across the long mining period. That kind of output builds a town, because mining is not just digging, it is housing, supply chains, mills, payroll, transport, and all the daily life that wraps around it. But mining towns have a built-in problem. They are often owned, controlled, or shaped by a small set of decisions made far from the people who live there. When costs rise, when prices change, when operations shut down, the town loses its core reason. Shafter today is often described as mostly deserted, with ruins and a church that still stands out against the land. And Shafter has another weird layer, because film crews realize the same thing you would realize if you stood there with a camera. It looks like a town that time forgot. American cinematographer reported that the Andromeda Strain shot its isolated village sequences in the near ghost town of Shafter, Texas, back in early 1970. And decades later, the Texas Film Commission noted that There Will Be Blood was filmed in Marfa and Shafter in summer 2006. So Shafter became one of those places where the visual story outlived the economic story. It is a town shaped by silver, then remembered by cameras. Number 2. Thurber, Erath County. Thurber is one of the clearest company town stories in Texas. It started as a coal mining town in the late 1800s, then became a full company-controlled community. At its peak, around 1918 to 1920, the population is described as perhaps 8,000 to 10,000. That is not a village. That is a real city size for that region at that time. Thurber had the amenities people forget coal towns could have. Hotels, an opera house, churches, stores, an ice and electric plant, even the only library in the county according to the history. It also had what company towns often have: control. The company owned the housing, ran the stores, and shaped daily life through payroll systems and rules. Thurber also had a major immigrant workforce from many countries, pulled in because the location was isolated and the labor demand was huge. Then the world changed around it. As railroads shifted from coal to oil, the coal market weakened. Labor conflict hit hard, including a major strike in the early 1920s. The mines closed in 1926, and Thurber tried to pivot. One of the big pivots was brick. A Texas Historical Commission marker notes that Thurber's brick plant produced paving bricks used across Texas, including Austin's Congress Avenue and even the Galveston seawall. That detail matters because it means parts of Thurber are still under people's feet in major cities, even if they have never heard the name. But brick could not save the town forever. Over time, the market changed again, and the town drained out. Offices and stores shut down. The population fell until Thurber became what it is today. A ghost town, not fully erased but emptied. Thurber is near the top because it shows the coldest version of town death. Not a storm, not a disease, not a fire. A business model that stopped needing people. Number 1. Belle Plain, Callahan County. And now we end with the quiet one, the least flashy collapse, but maybe the most familiar. Belle Plain was established in the 1870s in Callahan County, laid out with wide streets and the kind of plan that says, "This will be a center." It became the first county seat when Callahan County was organized in 1877. The population was never huge, around 400 in the 1880s, but it mattered. It had stores, doctors, lawyers, a newspaper, and the Pride Project, Belle Plain College. The college is a key detail because it shows the town was aiming higher than just survival. The school even advertised a serious music department with a large set of instruments and pianos for the era. Then, the railroad came through Baird. And that was the turning point. Some citizens moved. In 1883, Baird became the county seat, and Belle Plain's role shrank fast. The newspaper moved. Even the stone jail was taken apart and rebuilt in the new seat. Weather also hit the region hard in the mid-1880s, with a severe winter and drought years adding pressure. The college struggled financially and closed in 1892. And then the town did what many towns do when the main functions are gone. It dwindled down to almost nothing. By 1897, the record says only 4 families and 1 small store remained in the area. Belle Plain is number 1 because it is not a monster event story. It is a normal story. A town that lost the county seat, lost the rail advantage, lost its school, and then ran out of reasons to stay a town. And when you zoom out, that is the thread tying this whole list together. Texas did not run out of land. It ran out of reasons in specific places, and the reasons moved down the road. These 12 towns disappeared in 12 different ways. But if you look close, the patterns repeat. Water destroys, water drowns, water runs out. Rail lines choose winners. And companies can build a town like a product, then shut it down the same way. If you want one sentence that sums up this whole video, it is this: a town is not just buildings. A town is a set of connections. When enough connections snap, the place is still there, but the town is gone. If you know a Texas town that belongs in a part 2, drop the name. And if you want the next video to focus on one theme, like underwater towns, rail bypass towns, or company towns, say that too.